Every fisherman would have had a different take on what this thing could be. Some might say it was like a crab with claws, some might say more like an octopus. Its form kept changing depending on who you asked.
June 2024, Alaskan waters. Off the coast of Kodiak Island, a fishing crew aboard the Blue Streak encountered something so out of place, so mind-bending, that their lives have never been the same again. What began as a routine day of fishing in the Gulf of Alaska soon spiraled into a series of events that would challenge everything we think we know about life beneath the surface. And even the ones who witnessed it are still trying to make sense of what they saw. The oceans cover more than 70% of our planet's surface. Yet, to this day, less than 5% of it has been explored. And in those dark, mysterious waters, we know that strange, unexplainable creatures have been hiding for centuries, waiting to be discovered. Or perhaps not discovered at all. But in June 2024, it wasn't just an unknown species they found. No, it was something far more dangerous. And the strangest part? The authorities were already there, hiding the truth, before anyone had a chance to figure out what was going on. Why did the Navy rush in? Why did they go to such extreme lengths to contain it? And, most disturbing of all, what happened to those crew members who began developing strange abilities after their encounter? The crew of the Blue Streak was about to uncover something that went far beyond the limits of fishing, and way past the boundaries of what they thought was possible. Let me take you back to that day. It was June 14th, 2024. The Blue Streak was about 62 miles off Kodiak Island, a bit north of the usual shipping lanes. The conditions? Rough. The crew was used to the wild swings of the Alaskan seas, but that day, something wasn't right. Something that couldn't be explained, no matter how hard they tried. Thomas "Tom" Rinehart, the first mate of the Blue Streak, had worked in commercial fishing since he was 19. From crab boats to trawlers, he'd seen his fair share of strange things out on the water, but nothing would prepare him for this. "We had some bad weather, sure," Tom later recalled. "But what happened that day? That was something else." They were out there for the usual haul, pollock, cod, and maybe some crab. But when the sonar operator, Victor Chen, flagged something unusual, the crew's day went from average to surreal in a matter of seconds. It wasn't a school of fish. It wasn't a whale. It was a massive shape on the sonar, nearly 300 feet deep. And it wasn't moving like any creature they'd seen before. The shape was too large, the motion too deliberate. What was it? A whale? A giant squid? No, this was something else entirely. As the minutes passed, the strange entity started moving laterally, at a speed no marine animal should be capable of. The Blue Streak's crew quickly realized they weren't looking at any animal they had a name for. But it got stranger. The creature wasn't just moving erratically, it was affecting their equipment. The sonar? Offline? The radar? Gone. The entire boat's electronics were glitching and malfunctioning in ways no one could explain. That was just the beginning. With each passing minute, the interference grew more intense. Bursts of electromagnetic pulses radiated out, disrupting the boat's instruments like waves hitting a shoreline. Every attempt to troubleshoot failed. By 5:15 a.m., the crew was on edge. Their radar and fish finder were completely offline, and the malfunction wasn't just in the boat's systems. Personal electronics too started glitching out. Phones, tablets, everything was going haywire. But it wasn't just the electronics. The Blue Streak itself started trembling. It felt like an earthquake beneath the hull. But no, it wasn't the ocean floor shaking. It was coming from below them, from the creature. And it wasn't just a random tremor. The whole ship shuddered, as if something massive was directly beneath them. Something alive. The crew members were on edge. Some thought they were dealing with a sea monster. Others considered it a giant squid or an unknown creature. But this wasn't just any ordinary sea beast. What had they really stumbled upon? As the crew of the Blue Streak struggled to make sense of the unfolding events, the air around them seemed to thrum with an unsettling energy, something they couldn't put their finger on. Then, without warning, it started. A low-frequency vibration, almost like the pulse of the earth beneath them. The hull of the boat trembled, sending waves of unease through the crew. It wasn't a storm. There was no weather phenomenon causing this. It felt different, unnatural. The sound of the boat groaning under the pressure, the feeling in their bones. This was something alive, something massive, moving below them. And then it appeared. Not as a shadow or a vague form, but something unmistakably real, cutting through the water. At first, they caught only glimpses, flashes, of long, dark shapes slicing through the choppy water. Tentacles, large, billowing appendages that whipped and twisted in a slow, almost predatory motion. They couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. Each tentacle seemed to shimmer and shift in the dim light. The dark, grayish mass below, at first barely visible against the deep waters, became clearer with every moment. But when it fully emerged, their breath hitched. It wasn't just a squid or an octopus. It was something entirely different, something no one had ever seen before. The creature's body was enormous, stretching almost 20 feet in diameter, a hulking mass of thick, dark tentacles that writhed and coiled like living ropes beneath the water's surface. As the surface broke and the creature pushed itself higher, the crew could see the skin, dark gray, rubbery to the eye, but with streaks that looked almost metallic, catching the light in ways that were too unnatural to ignore. What struck them most, what made their hearts race with raw fear, wasn't just the creature's size or appearance. No, it was the unmistakable sense of intelligence. Something about it was different from any creature they had encountered before. Every time the massive entity moved, their instruments would react. At first, it was subtle. The sonar would glitch, the radar would hum erratically, but soon the patterns became undeniable. Each movement of the creature, each flex of its massive limbs seemed to communicate with its equipment. It was purposefully sending electromagnetic pulses into the very systems that should have been the most advanced of their kind. But what made it even stranger was the way its glow seemed to sync with the interference, as if the creature was aware of its effects. The creature wasn't just a force of nature, it was a force with intent, and that realization made the crew's blood run cold. And then came the breathing. It wasn't a simple motion, a continuous movement through the water. No, the creature seemed to expand and contract, its body rising and falling, almost like it was breathing in the very water around it. Was it some sort of living mechanism? An organic entity with the capability to manipulate itself in a way that no known creature could? The crew watched in horrified fascination as the mass seemed to flex and pulse with an eerie rhythm, its every movement filled with purpose. But the tentacles, oh, the tentacles were unlike anything they'd ever seen. They were thicker, more powerful than a squid's, and shorter than they expected, almost like thick ropes. They tapered in a way that didn't match the normal form of cephalopods. What was even stranger were the joints. These weren't smooth, uniform appendages. No, these tentacles were segmented, their joints moving in ways that didn't match the graceful, fluid motions of a squid or octopus. They weren't just moving, they were reacting to something, as though they had a will of their own. And then came the vents. The crew's confusion turned to outright fear as they saw something even more bizarre. Openings on the creature's body. They looked like vents, positioned along its dark form, and when they opened, water shot out. But this wasn't just water. The mist carried with it a metallic tang, like something unnatural had been mixed into the seawater. The very air around the boat seemed to hum with the strange energy that this creature was exuding. It wasn't just a biological function. No, it was like the creature was mechanized, engineered to do this. It was precision. It was the purpose. By this point, the crew had lost all sense of control. Their backup generator sparked, sending erratic bursts of power before it overloaded and shut down completely. The blue streak, usually a well-oiled machine in these turbulent waters, was now powerless. All systems had failed. They had no way to track the creature, no way to defend themselves, no way to even communicate with the outside world. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming. What could they do against something that could manipulate the very electronics on their vessel? And then, it did something that made their hearts stop. The creature moved closer. It wasn't a slow, cautious approach. No, this thing moved with a speed and precision that took everyone by surprise. It wasn't waiting for them to make a move, it was making its move. The realization hit the crew like a cold slap. This creature, whatever it was, could get to them before they had a chance to react. It wasn't just large, it was fast. and it had the power to overwhelm them in an instant. Tentacles shot out of the water, thick and powerful, brushing against the hull of the blue streak. The sound was unmistakable, a deep, wet scraping noise like rubber dragging across metal. The hull shuddered, shaking as though something massive was pushing against it, testing it. The vibrations surged through the boat, making the crew scramble. Panic set in. They didn't know what to do or what was coming next. The crew rushed to the life rafts, preparing for the worst. But deep down, they knew that launching those rafts into the open ocean might be worse than staying on the boat. How could they outrun something that had already proved it could control the very systems keeping them afloat? Every crew member could feel it. The danger was real. They were no longer just fishing. They were fighting for their survival. And the thing that had risen from the deep waters wasn't a mere beast of the sea. It was something with a mind, with an agenda, with a presence so powerful that it could make all their technology seem irrelevant in the blink of an eye. Captain McKinley made the call. They had no weapons on board, no harpoons, no firearms, just basic safety gear. It wasn't enough for something of this magnitude. But they had one option left. They fired a flare. A bright flash lit up the water near the creature. For a moment it flinched, then vanished below the surface. The crew thought it was over, that it had retreated. But less than a minute later, it reappeared, on the other side of the boat. It moved so quickly, so silently, that they hadn't even noticed it slipping beneath the hull. And then, it did something that none of them could have predicted. The lights on the boat started flickering. Then, the lights on the deck. The compass spun wildly. The interference escalated. And then came the pulses. They weren't random. It wasn't just static or an interference pattern that could be explained away. No. These pulses were structured, rhythmic, and almost deliberate. Each pulse sent a wave through the boat's systems, but it wasn't limited to the electronics. Angela, Bill, and Todd, three of the crew members who had been on deck and closest to the creature, began to experience something even more unsettling. Angela was the first to notice it. Electric outlines surrounded her crewmates as if their very bodies were being charged by something unseen. It wasn't just a visual disturbance, it was a sensation, a feeling of being lit up by an invisible force. Bill wasn't faring any better. He described a tingling sensation creeping over his skin, as if every nerve was oversensitized, vibrating in response to something he couldn't see but could feel. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with the strain of it. His head was pounding, a dull ache that seemed to pulse in time with the strange bursts of energy coming from the creature. Todd, the tech guy, had always been the one to stay calm in a crisis. He was the logical thinker, the one to figure out what was wrong with the electronics. But even he couldn't explain what was happening now. As he tried to walk, his feet seemed to stumble, as if the very ground beneath him was shifting. His vision? It wasn't stable. He couldn't focus. His hands gripped the railing to steady himself, but the more he tried to regain control, the more the world seemed to pulse around him. But it didn't stop there. The pulses intensified. The creature was close, too close. It wasn't just a monster from the deep. It wasn't just a sea creature. No, it was something else entirely. Something more intelligent than anything they'd encountered. Something that could manipulate the very fabric of their reality. Something that could alter their perception. But the worst part? They weren't the only ones interested in it. The Navy arrived, and they didn't come to investigate. They came to contain. Evidence vanished. Witnesses were silenced, and 3 crew members began to change. What had they found in those waters? The creature appeared to have a structure not typical of any marine life the crew had encountered. And no, this wasn't your average giant squid. No, this had compartments, layers, something more than just an animal. It was something with purpose. Could this be the first time a creature like this had been recorded? No, this wasn't your run-of-the-mill sea monster. This was something else entirely, something that even the Navy couldn't have been prepared for. Let's backtrack a bit. The Blue Streak was a 130-ton commercial vessel, equipped with advanced sonar and communication systems. But when they ventured into those deep waters, all those systems seemed useless. Not only was their equipment failing, but they were beginning to feel the effects themselves. As the creature moved closer, several of the crew members, Angela, Bill and Todd started experiencing strange symptoms. Their vision flickered. They felt disoriented, like the very air around them was warping. The crew was confused. What was going on? Could these strange sensations have been the result of the electromagnetic pulses they were picking up? Dr. Spencer, the onboard medic, was puzzled. There were no signs of poisoning, no toxins in their system. She couldn't explain what was happening. The only thing she could confirm: the crew was under attack by something no one could explain. Now, what happens when the government gets involved? In this case, the Navy swooped in fast. A joint operation of Navy contractors and private security showed up on the scene, unmarked, wearing black gear, and with documents bearing Department of Defense insignia. They were there to contain the situation, to cover it up. But why? What did they know that the rest of us didn't? Here's the thing. As the blue streak drifted away from the area, trying to escape, they didn't feel safe. Something in the water was watching them. They tried to move, but the creature kept pace, tracking them no matter how hard they tried to escape. Then, in the strangest twist, it simply disappeared. Gone from their sonar, gone from their radar, as if it had never been there at all. But why was it watching them? Was it just investigating? Or was it gathering data on the crew and their vessel? Around 9 a.m., the crew finally managed to get in touch with another nearby vessel, the Sundowner. They requested help, but, interestingly, didn't mention the creature. Why? Because they didn't want to sound crazy. They didn't want to risk being written off as people who'd lost their minds in the middle of nowhere. But then, things got even more suspicious. The Navy issued a security directive, warning all vessels in the area to stay clear due to live fire exercises happening nearby. But here's the thing. They'd never heard of any live fire exercises being scheduled for that day. The coordinates? They matched exactly with where they had just come from. And what do you know? The Sundowner reported that other vessels in the area were experiencing similar electronic malfunctions, just like the blue streak. Was this just a coincidence? Or was something much larger at play? The crew's nerves were on edge. Angela, Bill, and Todd were still experiencing episodes of strange visual disturbances. Angela described seeing electromagnetic halos around people and objects. Bill had headaches, his eyes bloodshot from the strain. Todd, the techie, was keeping track of every pattern he saw. But no one could explain what was happening. By 3:30 p.m., they had moved far enough away from the restricted zone to spot 2 military helicopters hovering low over the water. They had no markings, no identifying insignia, just dark, matte gray bodies gliding through the sky. Were they there to monitor? To intervene? Then came the call from Commander Stratton. He wanted their location, their condition, and their cargo. Not surprisingly, the crew didn't mention the creature. Why would they? The government was already involved in a cover-up, and their very existence could now be at risk. What if they were being watched, monitored, controlled? Soon after, a strange vessel appeared. It wasn't a typical Navy ship. No, this looked more like a research or operations vessel, carrying an elite team of individuals, armed, unmarked, and ready to take control of the situation. And that's when the crew of the Blue Streak realized something else. They were not in control. They had no say in what happened next. The crew was separated. Todd, Angela, and Bill were questioned in detail about their strange symptoms. They were subjected to tests, measurements, as if the contractors were fascinated by the phenomenon. They took everything: the ship's logs, the data, even personal phones, anything that could corroborate the story. The message was clear. This was a secret, and secrets had to be kept. So, what had happened on that day? Was it an experiment? A test of some kind? Or had they truly encountered something extraterrestrial? An unknown creature that was far beyond anything humanity had cataloged? There was no official statement from the Navy. No news, no coverage, just silence. But what the crew experienced was anything but silent. They'd seen a creature large enough to overwhelm their boat. It had manipulated the very fabric of their electronics. It had caused sensations in their bodies they couldn't explain. For the crew of the Blue Streak, everything was different after that day. They kept the silence, at first out of fear, then out of respect. Some of them moved on, leaving fishing altogether. Others, like Captain McKinley, couldn't shake the memories, the nightmares, the fear that there was more out there waiting in the deep. And as for the creature, it may still be out there watching, or maybe it's been driven away by the government. But one thing is certain: the truth, whatever it may be, remains hidden. And the cover-up? Well, it might not be over. So what really happened that day? What did they encounter out there in the Gulf of Alaska? And what are we not being told? Because if there's one thing the crew of the Blue Streak learned, it's this: the ocean is vast, and some secrets are meant to stay buried. And that's the mystery, the unanswered question that lingers in the water, just out of reach. Will we ever get the truth? Only time will tell.
Loch Ness holds an estimated 263 billion cubic feet of water, which is more than all the water in all the lakes, rivers, and reservoirs in the whole of England and Wales combined. So could this video be the latest proof that Nessie is somewhere in there? We turn to our experts to find out.
The ocean is a place of endless mystery. Throughout history, sailors, scientists, and ordinary people have reported encounters with bizarre and seemingly impossible creatures. Some of these beings are dismissed as myths, while others remain the subject of ongoing research, leaving the world divided between believers and skeptics. But what happens when credible footage, DNA studies, and expert analysis fail to provide clear answers? In this video, we will explore 4 of the most shocking sea creature mysteries ever recorded. These are not just legends, they are backed by evidence that challenges what we know about the natural world. From the infamous Loch Ness Monster to a bizarre Japanese mermaid mummy, from a gigantic snake-like creature in the Amazon River to an eerie Alaskan river monster, these cases have puzzled researchers, forensic analysts, and marine biologists alike. Each of these creatures has been captured on camera, examined by scientists, and debated worldwide. Some claim they are undiscovered species, others say they are hoaxes, and some even suggest they could be relics from prehistoric times.
Before cameras, before Photoshop, before robotic toy submarines, sure, a few dozen sightings may be fake, but all of them? No way.
Whatever the truth may be, these mysteries continue to fuel speculation, making us question just how much we really know about the creatures lurking beneath the surface. Now let's begin with one of the most famous and controversial cryptids of all time, the Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness Monster, Scotland's most famous mystery. Loch Ness, a vast and deep freshwater lake in Scotland, has been at the center of one of the longest-running sea creature mysteries in history. The legend of Nessie, as it is affectionately called, dates back centuries, but it wasn't until the 20th century that photographic and video evidence began to emerge. The most recent and compelling footage was recorded by a couple in their 50s who were vacationing in the Scottish Highlands. As they stood by the loch, they noticed something strange moving through the water. The footage they captured shows a large, dark object pushing forward, creating a noticeable wake behind it. Experts have analyzed this video, and forensic video analyst Michael Primo confirmed that no CGI, editing, or splicing was detected. The footage is genuine, but what exactly does it show?
Authenticity, nothing appears to be CGI. The video appears to be consistent and plays consistently. No editing or splicing was detected. Through the media interrogation, digital information analysis, through medics, we were able to confirm the authenticity of this video.
Theories about Nessie. Some researchers believe the Loch Ness Monster is a living plesiosaur, a marine reptile that existed during the Cretaceous period, over 65 million years ago. They argue that the creature's long neck and humps match descriptions of plesiosaurs. However, marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger disagrees. She points out that a 2019 DNA study conducted by New Zealand's Otago University tested water samples from the loch and identified over 3,000 different species, but no plesiosaur DNA was found. The study did, however, reveal an abundance of eel DNA in Loch Ness, leading some scientists to propose that the legendary monster could actually be an enormous eel. Others believe that the creature might be a previously undiscovered species, a large, deep-dwelling fish, or even a giant amphibian. Skeptics argue that many Nessie sightings are likely misidentified logs, waves, or optical illusions caused by the loch's dark, murky waters and depth of 754 feet.
Oh my God! Did you see that?
Despite these scientific investigations, sightings continue to this day, with sonar scans regularly detecting large moving objects beneath the surface. A 2023 sonar reading even picked up an unidentified serpentine-shaped object measuring between 20 and 30 feet long at a depth of 500 feet. Could Loch Ness still be hiding a mystery that science has yet to explain? Or is the Loch Ness Monster simply a case of mistaken identity? The debate continues, but one thing is certain: something strange is lurking in those dark waters. The mysterious Japanese mermaid mummy. A cryptid or clever hoax? Legends of mermaids exist in nearly every culture, but in Japan, they take on a more terrifying form. One such mermaid-like creature, known as the Ningyo, is described as having a monkey-like face, sharp teeth, and a fish-like body. Unlike the Western concept of a beautiful mermaid, the Ningyo is often portrayed as a frightening entity, capable of bringing misfortune or granting immortality to those who eat its flesh. In February 2022, scientists in Japan unsealed a 300-year-old box containing an alleged mermaid mummy reportedly captured by a fisherman in the 1700s. The mummy, measuring just 12 inches long, had a humanoid upper body, complete with a face, hands, and sharp teeth, but a lower half covered in fish scales and ending in a small tail fin.
Usually depicted as being fish-like, but with varying degrees of humanoid features. The Ningyo is often described as having a monkey-like mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, like we're seeing here.
This bizarre relic had been preserved for centuries by Shinto priests, passed down as a sacred heirloom. But what exactly was this thing? Was it a real creature, an ancient hoax, or something else entirely? Investigating the Japanese mermaid. To get to the bottom of this mystery, a team of paleontologists and forensic analysts conducted a CT scan and DNA analysis of the mummy. Their goal was to determine if it was a natural organism or an elaborate taxidermy creation. Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger weighed in on the biological possibility of such a creature existing. She pointed out that no known marine species matches this anatomy, and its body shape would make survival in the ocean extremely difficult. Unlike seals, sea lions, and whales, whose bodies are fusiform, streamlined for efficient swimming, this alleged mermaid had distinct human-like features, which would make movement and thermoregulation in cold water nearly impossible. However, Japan has a long history of mermaid-like folklore, and some researchers considered the possibility that this mummy could be an example of an amabia, a legendary creature believed to appear during pandemics to warn of disease outbreaks. The amabie was said to be covered in scales, with long hair, and capable of emitting a mysterious glow. Interestingly, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, Japanese social media saw a surge in amabi drawings being posted as a form of spiritual protection. Scientific examination and theories. Professor Jeff Meldrum, an expert in anatomy and anthropology, examined the cultural significance of the mermaid mummy.
If you consume its flesh, you will be endowed with everlasting life. That then begs the question why someone would preserve the remains of such a creature as a relic as opposed to serving it up for dinner.
He noted that while the Ningyo legend claimed that eating its flesh granted eternal life, there were no signs that this specific specimen had ever been used for consumption. Instead, it had been treated as a sacred object, stored carefully by priests. But was it real? Dr. Conger pointed out a crucial clue. In the past, similar mermaid mummies had been found to be fakes, often made by sewing the upper body of a small primate, such as an orangutan or monkey, onto the tail of a fish, then drying and preserving the body to give it an aged appearance. One of the most infamous examples was the Fiji mermaid, which was part of P.T. Barnum's 19th century sideshow collection. A key scientific detail in the analysis of the Japanese mummy was the lack of visible sutures. Typically, taxidermy creations involve stitching together different animal parts, but no external stitching was found on this specimen. However, experts noted that hidden stitches, a method used in delicate facial taxidermy, could still be present, an unexplained relic. With the DNA results still pending, scientists have yet to determine whether the mummy contains genetic material from a known species or if it is an elaborate forgery. Even if it turns out to be a hoax, the cultural and historical significance of the mermaid legend remains undeniable. For centuries, these stories have played an essential role in Japanese folklore, religion, and even pandemic-related traditions. But if the DNA tests reveal an unknown species, it could completely reshape our understanding of marine evolution and cryptid biology. Until then, this mysterious mummy remains one of the most shocking sea creature mysteries ever recorded.
Unexplained object. The paleontologist will soon release their results, and while Conger believes this is a hoax, until those DNA tests come back, we're going to say, we just don't know.
The Amazon's giant serpent, a relic of the Titanoboa? Deep in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, the world's most biodiverse ecosystem, an extraordinary sighting has left both scientists and local tribes in awe. In March 2020, a group of Brazilian fishermen navigating the Xingu River encountered something so massive and terrifying that it defied belief. At first, the water appeared to ripple strangely, as if disturbed by an underwater force. But as the fishermen got closer, they realized they were looking at an enormous snake-like creature, its dark, scaly body stretching across the river. By their estimates, the serpent measured at least 50 feet in length. The footage taken that day was quickly analyzed by experts, and the sheer size of the creature sparked debates about whether it could be a living relic of an ancient species, an undiscovered monster, or a well-fed anaconda of unprecedented proportions. The legendary Boyuna, the Amazon's river guardian. For centuries, the indigenous tribes of South America have told stories of a colossal serpent deity known as the Boyuna. This mythological creature is said to guard sacred waters, swallowing people and boats whole if they disturb the balance of the jungle. Some versions of the legend describe the Boyuna as a black, serpentine being with glowing eyes, capable of controlling river currents and even shape-shifting to deceive humans. Could these legends be rooted in real sightings of an unknown giant snake species? According to field researcher Ken Gerhard, the Amazon is home to many cryptid stories, but the Boyuna legend stands out because it is consistently described as a real, flesh-and-blood animal, rather than just a spirit or supernatural force.
It's described as being an enormous black snake or serpent, and it's considered to be a guardian of sorts.
Titanoboa, a prehistoric giant that once ruled the Amazon. The most shocking theory surrounding this sighting is the possibility that the Amazon's rivers might still be home to descendants of the Titanoboa, an enormous snake that once ruled prehistoric rainforests. The Titanoboa coregonans was a massive, now extinct snake species that lived approximately 60 million years ago, shortly after the extinction of the dinosaurs. Fossil evidence shows that it could reach 42 to 50 feet in length, weigh over a ton, and had a midsection as thick as a human waist. Unlike today's green anaconda, which primarily preys on mammals, birds, and reptiles, the Titanoboa was believed to be a semi-aquatic predator that primarily hunted fish, much like modern-day caimans and giant otters. Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley finds the idea of a Titanoboa relatively fascinating but unlikely. She acknowledges that some species once thought to be extinct, like the coelacanth fish, have been rediscovered, but notes that no verified Titanoboa fossils have been found in modern times. However, that does not rule out the possibility that the Amazon may be home to an undiscovered snake species of extraordinary size. To determine whether the Amazon serpent sighting was real or a case of digital manipulation, forensic video analyst Michael Primo closely examined the footage. He found that the video was genuine, with no signs of CGI or tampering. The creature's movement was consistent with a real, living snake, which made hoaxing it through special effects highly improbable. However, marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger noted something crucial about the creature's midsection. It appeared to be bloated, suggesting that it had recently consumed a very large prey item, possibly a capybara, deer, or other large mammal. This feeding-related swelling is a trait observed in modern anacondas, which can stretch their bodies significantly to accommodate their prey. Based on this, Dr. Conger identified the creature as a giant anaconda, but one that was larger than any officially recorded anaconda in history. Could a 50-foot anaconda exist? The largest anaconda ever officially recorded was about 30 feet long, though unverified reports claim that anacondas of 40 to 50 feet have been sighted in remote areas of the Amazon. A 50-foot anaconda would be far beyond what is currently accepted by herpetologists, but the Amazon is so vast and unexplored that a small population of hypergiant anacondas could still exist in deep, unexplored waters. The sheer size of the Amazon rainforest, which spans over 2.7 million square miles, makes it incredibly difficult to track all species living within it. Large, elusive creatures could still be thriving in undisturbed regions, where few humans go. An enormous anaconda, but how big? Experts remain divided over this sighting. While some believe it could be a Titanoboa descendant, most scientists lean toward it being a particularly massive anaconda, one that possibly set a new record for snake size. The Amazon's dense and dangerous terrain makes studying these creatures extremely difficult.
I think that this is an incredible sighting of an enormous snake. I think that this video has been stretched and manipulated.
Without further physical evidence, like a shed skin sample or verified measurements, we may never know exactly how big this anaconda truly was. Regardless of its true size, this sighting proves that the Amazon is still full of mysteries, with creatures that continue to blur the line between science and legend. The Alaskan ice serpent, a frozen river monster, or just debris? Alaska, a land of rugged wilderness and icy waters, is home to some of the most isolated and mysterious environments on Earth. Its vast rivers, frigid lakes, and deep fjords hold many secrets, but one of the most baffling aquatic mysteries surfaced in October 2016, when a man named Craig McCaw captured footage of a strange, undulating object moving through the Chena River in Fairbanks, Alaska. This 20 to 25-foot-long object, appearing to swim against the current, quickly sparked discussions among locals, cryptid researchers, and even scientists. Could this be evidence of a previously unknown Alaskan river creature? Legends of the Tizhiruk, Alaska's own Loch Ness monster. For generations, indigenous Inuit communities in Alaska have spoken of a fearsome river monster known as the Tizhiruk. Descriptions vary, but it is often depicted as a long, eel-like creature with a head resembling that of a snake or seal, sometimes with a mane of hair running down its back. Unlike Scotland's Loch Ness monster, the Tizhiruk is said to be far more dangerous. Many Inuit stories recount how this serpentine predator has snatched people from boats or riverbanks, dragging them into the icy depths, never to be seen again. The most terrifying version of the legend claims that the Tizhiruk has transparent skin, allowing people to see its victims still digesting inside its body. While this particular detail may lean toward myth rather than reality, the consistency of Tizhiruk sightings over the centuries suggests that something strange and unknown could be lurking in Alaska's waterways. So when McCaw's video surfaced, many wondered if the Tizhiruk had finally been caught on camera. Scientific analysis of the Alaskan river monster. The footage shows a long, dark, flexible object moving through the water with a rippling snake-like motion. The fact that it appeared to be swimming against the current initially suggested that it was alive, fueling speculation that it could be an undiscovered aquatic species. To get a clearer answer, experts, including marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger, were called in to analyze the footage. Could this be a large eel? One of the first theories was that this could be an enormous eel, similar to those found in deep-sea environments. However, Alaska's extreme cold makes it an unlikely habitat for large eel species. Unlike in Loch Ness, where high eel DNA concentrations were found, no similar DNA studies have been conducted in the Chena River. More importantly, there are no known eel species in Alaska that reach such lengths. A giant Arctic snake. Some cryptid enthusiasts proposed that this could be a large, cold-resistant snake, but Alaska has no native snake species. Snakes are exothermic, cold-blooded, and cannot survive in freezing temperatures, making this theory biologically improbable. An unknown Arctic fish? Sturgeon are known to reach impressive sizes and have serpentine movements, leading some to believe this could be an unidentified species of large fish. However, sturgeon do not have flexible bodies that undulate in such a way. Their motion is more rigid and powerful, unlike the fluid snake-like movement seen in the video. With no clear animal match, the mystery deepened. Could the Alaskan ice serpent be just a frozen rope? After further hydrological analysis, Dr. Conger proposed a completely different explanation. This may not be a living creature at all. Upon closer examination of the video, scientists noticed that the object was not moving forward, but rather seemed to be fixed in place while the current flowed around it. This ruled out the possibility that it was an actively swimming animal. Instead, Dr. Conger theorized that the creature was likely a piece of submerged debris, such as a fishing line or a length of rope encased in ice. The swaying, undulating movement could be explained by the force of the river's current, pushing the partially frozen rope back and forth, creating the illusion of a swimming serpent. Final verdict: a case of optical illusion? Although the video continues to be debated, most experts agree that the Alaskan river monster was likely an illusion created by ice and current movements. However, this does not disprove the existence of large unknown creatures in Alaska's waters. The state's vast uncharted lakes, deep fjords, and glacial rivers make it entirely possible that undiscovered species could still be lurking beneath the surface. The mystery of the Tizhuruk and other Alaskan cryptids remains, and while the 2016 sighting might have a rational explanation, there are other reports of massive, unidentified creatures that cannot be so easily dismissed. As technology advances and exploration of remote regions becomes more feasible, perhaps one day, science will uncover the truth behind the legends. The limitations of science in cryptid research. Despite the rapid advancement of scientific tools, forensic analysis, and DNA sequencing, the study of mysterious sea creatures remains a challenging and controversial field. The main reason? The ocean and many freshwater bodies remain largely unexplored. Over 80% of the ocean is still unmapped, meaning that thousands, if not millions of species could still be undiscovered. Even in well-studied lakes and rivers like Loch Ness and the Amazon River, deep and murky waters make long-term observation extremely difficult. Large marine animals like giant squids and deep-sea sharks were once considered mythical, yet were later proven to exist. But here's the problem. Proving a species exists is far harder than disproving it. For cryptids like the Loch Ness Monster and the Boyuna Serpent, skeptics demand a body, DNA samples, or a living specimen as evidence. However, if these creatures are highly elusive, deep-dwelling, or have small populations, capturing one might be virtually impossible. In contrast, a lack of evidence does not necessarily prove that a species does not exist. It simply means we haven't found it yet. This is why sonar scans, unexplained videos, and forensic analysis remain crucial tools in cryptid research. Even without physical proof, scientists cannot fully dismiss these sightings, especially when patterns emerge across different cultures and locations. The ocean's deepest mysteries still await us. From the cold, dark waters of Loch Ness to the ancient rivers of the Amazon, from the cultural relics of Japan to the icy depths of Alaska, one thing is clear: our planet still holds many mysteries. Each of the 4 bizarre sea creatures discussed in this documentary challenges what we think we know about biology and the natural world. The Loch Ness Monster remains a subject of intense debate, with new sonar evidence continuing to fuel speculation. The Japanese mermaid mummy raises questions about ancient myths, hoaxes, and cultural relics, leaving scientists searching for genetic answers. The Amazon's giant serpent could be a record-breaking anaconda, or even a distant relative of the long-extinct Titanoboa. The Alaskan river monster may have turned out to be a frozen rope, but the mystery of the Tizhuruk and other Alaskan cryptids remains unsolved. Despite all of our technological advancements, more than 80% of the ocean remains unexplored, and even large freshwater bodies like the Amazon and Alaskan fjords contain vast unexplored regions. If creatures like the coelacanth, a fish thought to be extinct for millions of years, can still exist today, who's to say what else is lurking in the depths? Perhaps the next viral video or deep-sea expedition will finally provide the proof that cryptid enthusiasts and scientists alike have been searching for.